Hello, lovely adventurers, and thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of the Saving Old School podcast. Quite frankly, we have the guest of our dreams on today with Mod Ash, and I'm so incredibly thankful for his time. Thank you for coming on today, Mod Ash, and thank you for viewing. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Do you drink tea in the evening too?
I do, not really late at night, but that's just because I've probably had enough by then.
Yeah, even then, I mean, it's still like relatively high in caffeine. Is nettle tea a thing? I'm not gonna lie. The only first time I ever heard of that was RuneScape, so I was curious.
I think it's a thing. I've never had it, but leaves, they got flavour. Nettles
Sure.
can taste nice. There's a cheese made in Cornwall in the southwest of England
Hmm.
called Yarg, which is always made with nettle leaves wrapped around it.
Really?
And it tastes kind of interesting. You eat the leaves as well as eating the cheese. They don't sting or anything by this point because they've been dead for a long time on a cheese.
Even the name, like, did you say Yarg?
Yarg.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. I wonder if like a Viking named that or something. Like, it sounds very.
I've not been to Cornwall myself, but I imagine the accent must be interesting.
Really, I was talking to a guy who plays. I think he's from the northern UK, and he was saying how like different the accents can be as you travel even like 5 miles. And it's
Oh yeah.
interesting here because you've got like southern, which is like a huge, massive area, and then you've got like northerners. So it's like there's almost like no divide. Um, so my third question today is, when did you first hear about RuneScape? We're gonna go like way back. Again, I played for like 20 years. I'm not sure at which point you started coming into Jagex and becoming the awesome legend that you are. Again, thank you so much. I'm so flattered. I was telling my wife, I was like, I get to talk to Mod Ash today. But yeah, so when did you first hear of RuneScape? Do you remember like a definitive moment?
Pretty much. I mean, we're talking 2001. I
Mm-hmm.
was a second year at college, and I'd just been persuaded to join the church, the university's chaplaincy choir for the Catholic chaplaincy. Little choir with the guitars and my violin and some lads who could mostly sing. And one of the guys in there was called Andrew, and I know this was Andrew Gower, who had graduated a year previously, but hadn't was still coming up for the weekends to hang with his mates. And he was he occasionally kept talking about this RuneScape thing, and I asked his friends, "What's this RuneScape thing Andrew keeps talking about?" And one of them said something along the lines of, "Well, it's this mad game thing Andrew's put on the internet where you click on rocks all day and Andrew gets money." And I thought I'd got to get me some of that. So I looked it up and went to his website and read the whole website. In those days, it had an actual manual for the game explaining what all the
Yep.
skills were, what you could do at each level. And I got entranced, like, oh my God. So you do this skill and then you can use these items. If you do this skill, you can use these arrows that go with these bows that you need this level for. It all fits together in a lovely virtual world. I'm playing this. So I started playing immediately. Free to play, though. I was a
Of
student.
course.
Didn't think I should be spending my dwindling resources on a computer game until I'd completed Dragon Slayer anyway. At
That's
that
like
point,
that's the
yeah.
benchmark for membership. My kids, they're
Yeah.
starting to play, and I'm not buying the membership until they can beat Dragon Slayer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with my Jagex hat on, buy bonds, buy lots of bonds. But
Yes.
apart from that, yeah, I also saw it as the benchmark. And only when I completed the free-to-play game did I think, eh, actually, it's supporting local business if I subscribe to this game because Andrew was pretty local. So, um, subscribed, did 10 easy members quests that day, thought this was the best day of my life. Um,
do you
Ended
remember?
up
Do you remember
graduating
having a?
probably,
Do you remember
yeah.
having my bad? Do you remember having a particular favorite from those 10 you did? You can continue after that. I was just it popped
Oh,
up.
I'm going to say Monk's Friend. It's silly. It doesn't have a plot as such, but they're putting on a party for a kid. They need booze. What kind of party is this? Why do the monks even have a kid that they don't traditionally reproduce? And then so you're trying to find a blanket to stop the child crying, and then you've got to get beer. It's like
It's just a
This is a weird
hilarious
ass
quest.
quest, but I was laughing the whole way through and enjoying the puzzles and
It's like a Monty Python quest, you know? It's like something
yeah.
you would see like, and that's one thing I love about the humor, and I always have. My bad, but you were talking about going back to university.
Oh well, I ended up graduating in '04 with probably my main area of expertise being RuneScape by this point, and that was thankfully about right for what I needed in my chosen career, rather than the material science and metallurgy degree I was meant to be an expert on. Oh well.
Yeah, it's like the best path in life. You know, a lot of times, I talk about my faith and stuff, but it's like, are you familiar with Norse mythology at all? Like the term Yggdrasil, the tree of
That's
life.
the great tree, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I think it's meant to talk about like the different branches you can go down. Because all of us can look at like certain benchmarks in our life where our journey got started on a particular way, and I think that's kind of what's cool about this game is that it really is like you get to be whoever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do, and it's so. Some people will hear that and think that that's cliche, but it's like I live my life the same way I've always played, and it was like this got to be that adventure for me, and kind of like the way you were talking about, you know, going through and doing these quests and having this adventure. Like, there's not a lot of adventure left in modern society, and it's like, are you a fan of fantasy?
I do like fantasy.
Okay, do you have like a particular like favorite fantasy like genre or following?
Um, I have to say I've mostly been enjoying the fantasy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, give or take some of the recent additions to it. Uh,
It's pretty good.
um,
There was some stuff that was really good. I even like Ant-Man's probably one of my favorites. I,
yeah,
he's
there,
hilarious.
there's so much variety and room for big epic stories and room for, say, Ant-Man and the Wasp, where they're up against basically just some guy who runs a restaurant in his spare time. And yeah, it's still great fun.
It is, and I like Paul Rudd too. I think he does a good job. He's definitely got that sense of humor. I don't know if it's a British thing. Like my first experience with British sense of humor was like RuneScape and like cabbages and that kind of stuff. And now it's funny. I do and I ain't even trying to plug it. I mean, it'll be on my YouTube channel, but I do this dungeon locked Iron Man. And really, what I'm doing is kind of going through like all my early quests and doing like some silly voiceovers and back and forth. So we did Black Knight's Fortress last night. You know the scene where you throw the cabbage into the hole and it like falls down and it causes a cauldron to bubble and everything. And it's like it's one of the like first cutscenes you really see in the game. And it was like I go through all that and it's a fun time. But I I'm 30 years old now and it's one of those things that sometimes my fighter guys they're like, yeah, man, I remember RuneScape back in the day, this and that, and it's like they're wondering why, they get stressed out at all these games they play, and I'm like, no, come to the dark side, play old school RuneScape, and you'll feel reinvigorated. Um, I was gonna ask too, so I do play both versions of the game. Do RuneScape 3 mods ever come to you for advice? Do you guys work together? How does that work?
Well, we don't formally work together, but in practice, some of us are in the office, some of them are in the office, and our desks are what, but like 5 foot away. So
Okay.
inevitably, we share a few ideas and chat in the kitchen or in the canteen. And it's
I
interesting
didn't
to
know if it
hear
was that
them.
close. That's really cool to hear. I didn't know if it was like different parts of the building. That's really cool.
It's an open plan office, so somebody else's desk is just a stone's throw away, and you can see them and wave to them. A lot of people work from home these days,
Hmm.
which loses a lot of the scope for spontaneous chat,
Hmm.
but they're still around. And sometimes they'll ask us what went well when we tried something, and we'll ask them what went well when they tried something. And sometimes we'll know jolly well what went well or went badly when they did things because we can kind of observe it and see what the players are saying online about it and
Yes.
learn how we might or might not want to not copy but emulate some of the ideas. Um, they've done new skills many times, most recently necromancy coming up. So with us looking at what what might go well for a new skill, we've also had a look at what went well, went badly for their skills, and
Sure.
what the players responded well to and what could be improved.
Particularly the thing that caused me to kind of ask that was when I first started making content, I came back for the RuneScape 3 Zamrak release, but before that was whatever the most recent leagues was. And so, I was hot and heavy on OS, and then the Zamrak release came out, and I was like, I want to play this. And at the time, I really hadn't heard a lot of communication from RS3. Like, you had been the main liaison for the game, that I had saw on Old School, the person who's very hands on from my perspective. I know there are a lot of people who work on it. I'm just saying, as a player perspective. But it was like with RS3, I didn't really have like a face for the game. Mod Doom started coming in, and I'm actually really impressed with his style so far, and that's good because it's like, one thing that you've always maintained is that sense of humor and being personable. And it's like, I like that Mod Doom's doing that. I like the jokes. I like the communicating on Twitter. Like, that shows a lot, believe it or not. Because it's like, man, I know what it means to me, but the other person asking that question about X, comes back, you got a sincere response from them. That's like a committed player for a long time. And that does mean a lot to have, you guys be like hands on like that.
Makes the work feel more real to me to have contact with the players because let's face it, how many people just want to be told by your manager, do this job. Now, good boy, well done. Here's another paycheck. Now, here's another thing to do. Good boy, well done. Here's another paycheck. Here's another thing to do. I am not and never have been particularly well motivated by that. But some engagement with players on the other end of it, knowing that there's something they're complaining about. Maybe there's something I can do about it, or maybe there's something I can get done by someone else about it. Um, that's a lot more meaningful to me than just the possibility that, I'm a product manager. Maybe I could be a senior product manager. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's say senior. Um, I'm a lot more invested because I've got player contacts and because I came from the player background too.
And that it's funny you say that. I think it's interesting that Mod Doom wasn't a RuneScape player and kind of came in. The reason I think that's necessary is because it's no secret. Old School blows RS3 out of the water as far as player base, content, all those, in my opinion, and probably the factual numbers. I think it might be good to have a person who didn't play come in and maybe take on that niche, because what they're going to have to do is find new players to play. And because really it's not, I don't think it's a net positive. I like when old school players come over, like I showed my friend some PVM last night, that was cool. Or, I have a RS3 guy come over and, I show them how to do something on an Iron Man, etc. But, for RS3, I think a lot of it, they're going to have to draw like a new player base. Whether it be a younger generation, a completely new my generation player base. So I think it's interesting to have him come into that niche as a person who didn't play the game before. And I think he's waiting on us to get our interview out, probably to see how it goes, make sure I'm not like an ambush journalist. But he's supposed to chat with me at some point, so that'll be interesting. But now, when you say like being a player coming in and speaking to people like that makes such a big difference. Too, it's one of those things. If you want good communication with your player base, doing stuff like that's going to help. Because I was going to commend you all. I don't know how you guys deal with all the negativity that some of the players will put out. And I mean, I assume you get used to it, but it's like even me in fighting, like, bro, it's hard to handle sometimes. So like, you all are tough because you guys got Reddit, all these other things.
I think it's important not to see it as personal when it isn't, because a lot of what gets said probably wasn't said with a lot of thought sometimes. Now, actual constructive feedback, you can tell that some thought goes into that about what numbers would be better for the balancing, where areas of the game where attention is needed. People actually think about that. But when somebody just rocks up in my Twitter feed and says, Oi, you're fat, you wear spectacles, and your game sucks, what are you going to do about it? It's like, come on, it's like being back in the playground at
Yeah.
school. It's like, you've got glasses. What do you fucking do? Uh, it's not. it's a bit like seeing a toddler screaming all the naughty words it knows and waiting for the adults to get upset or something. Um, and so some of that doesn't come across as heavily as maybe they intended it to hit. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, my whole life, man, like I got made fun of in school and all kinds of other stuff. And I'm gonna be honest though, like the thing that stuck out to me is that I think that is what makes you successful, is because you're able to look at that and not take it personal. Because if you spent all your energy being like, "Oh fuck you, dude," or this or that, being petty about it, it you would lose your energy toward the passions you love. Because then you're not going to have that energy to go converse with that one player about, whether it be forestry or this and that, which congratulations in a little bit, if you don't mind. I'd like to maybe hop on a couple of the new updates, but it's like, you being able to do that is like admirable. And I think it helps change the culture because I like that old school does that. Even like with the new quests, like there's always a joke. It's like joke, narrative, do something, joke. Even in like Dragon Slayer 2, one of my favorite quests of all time. It's like I don't remember like particularly what it was, but like Robert the Strong is one of my favorite characters, and it's like there's always like him being badass, but it's like a joke too because he's a cat, and it's like
Yeah,
never lost that.
I remember playing quests when they came out. I was already working for the firm at this point, like when Mountain Daughter comes out or Garden of Tranquility comes out. And they may not be, they're not trying to tell an epic story, but I laughed my silly head off the whole afternoon playing the quest and have happy memories of it now. And it usually unlocked a little something that will change the game in some little way that I can see and remember. Hey, I did that. There's no statue on that plinth. I've been here. I love that kind of feeling. Just that it's been fun and something little changed as a result of it. I haven't done a lot of quests myself. I tend to gravitate to big systems projects for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite of my works is making friends with my arm.
I
It's
I'm dead serious. I was literally watching Jimmy's playthrough of that last night, and then because he started working on Profundus and all that. But Profundos, I don't even think I say it right. But either way, that quest is so funny and so good. And trolls are probably my favorite characters just because of the whole they're named after the first thing they eat. And I mean,
yeah,
my arm.
yeah. The jokes are extremely corny and predictable, given that the whole thing is about my arm, and we're not trying to get away from that. But to him, it's serious. To the characters, it's all serious. They just don't. But we can have a good laugh about them coping in this slightly mad world they're stuck with, and occasionally misunderstanding things, and having to keep a straight face when a character shouts, "I am mother, I am your father," and yep, he's not laughing at himself. He doesn't know it's funny, but it bloody can be.
It makes me wonder if that's how aliens view our interactions. Because it's like, we take everything very seriously when it comes to stuff, and they're probably like, it ain't that serious, man. And it's just like I don't know that quest, and then I did enjoy like a lot of the Mauritania series, some of this more serious stuff like the Mir, how do you say it, Mirq,
Mikey.
Myrkey. Okay, so I like a lot of those quests too. They were a little more serious, even though there was some jokes sprinkled here and there, but I really liked those quests too.
Yeah, for what it's worth, the Mayaki are named after the French resistance Maquis, um, and but with Maya thrown into it because they live in a swamp.
Hmm.
Um, it's unclear whether they were named after the French resistance originally or the Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Voyager Maquis, who were named after the resistance movement. But I'm pretty sure that's where the name came from. So we tend to pronounce it as Mikey to sound like the French word. I don't know what the French word actually means originally, but it was a resistance movement. It's spelled Maquis.
Do you have any advice for people? So one of the things that I've seen a lot of people like tag you in is like, I want to be a Jmod one day. What do you have a piece of advice for a person who would want to be a Jmon? Like when you hear that, like how what's the first thing that comes to mind?
So the thing that my interviewer said he liked about my application was that I was a fairly long-standing player by Jagex's standards in 2004. I'd been playing for 2.5 years,
Mm,
which in 2004 the game had only been around 3 or so years.
yeah,
So
that was the
I
big
was,
boom right there, like the big,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's right. The mini clip deal, I suspect, did that. And so I was applying as a player, but I was very serious in my cover letter. I mentioned that I was a player. I didn't say, this is my account name. Look, I've got a 1,500 skill total, wow, stuff like that.
That's
I said,
impressive then.
I, well, then, yeah. But I didn't mention what my account was. I mentioned I was one of the forum mods, but I didn't say which one. But I said it would give me an insight into their customer support needs for my application to join the support team. And he appreciated that because I wasn't being a player. I was looking at the company's needs and explaining how my player experience could help the company achieve its needs and try and do it better. And that's what I really wanted was to, run the forums. I very nearly got it too, but I got moved out of the support team into QA surprisingly quickly. So bang went that plan. Ain't complaining, of course. But I think the advice I'd take from it was, um, yeah, you're a player. Be proud of what you've done in the game. Be proud of the fact that you've got that experience and expertise on the game. Totally be proud of it. But don't try and make it the key selling point. Turn it into a story about what you can bring to the table because of it and because of everything else you've got. You, depending on what role you're going for, you've probably got some experience that will help. Like you're going for a game design role. Maybe you've tried designing a game before. Maybe you've been at college doing a project. You've been asked to write some code with other people as a project there. Or maybe you've just done it with your mates for fun. Talk about that. Talk about what you learned. Talk about what you've learned that you could do better in hindsight based on what you've learned. And talk about how you can make it valuable to help the game be better
So don't
or
don't
whatever department
present
you want.
don't say, "Hey, I stood at blast furnace for 400 hours and got 99 strength." Instead, explain how, "Hey, my perseverance, my focus, these things, right?" So focus on it, not the RuneScape context, but the beneficial context to the company. Correct?
Yeah. And of course, um, if you do have design insights that you've gained through playing the game so much, and I bet you will, mention some. I mean, let's face it, we'd ask you in the interview anyway,
Yeah.
but be ready to mention some. And hey, one guy rocked up with a file binder of his pitch for a sort of survival mode um, that, hey, it wasn't a bad idea. I wouldn't mind seeing it tried sometime. Maybe it's the theme of another league. But
Oh.
um,
Well, you got Dead Man Apocalypse coming out too.
we do. And well, if another league is to be confirmed, it would be
Yes.
confirmed via a summit live stream officially by a marketing team rather than, say, anything that a developer might go and leak on a informal chat. But uh, I do expect we'll see more leagues in future, even if, of course, I could not possibly confirm
I
anything.
am so excited. Oh my gosh. That's listen, I was gonna even like RuneCraft while we're doing this, but I wanted to focus completely. It's like I love old school so much, but my favorite is leagues. I have not had that much fun in I don't know how long. And I mean, I have fun. I have fun every single day playing. But it's like getting to play the very first league, the dopamine of the XP drop. See, what was the first one? Was Twisted League the first one?
First was
Oh,
the Twisted League, yes.
I was
People
racing
thought
it.
that it
I'm
was
like,
a,
I want
yeah.
Mithril, and I was like, oh my god, there's so many people playing. This is going to be hard, but yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it would be nice to see some of the older league themes again. We're thinking, for example, that if we did Twisted again, obviously it wouldn't just be dig out the old one and rerun it as a cheapo project because there's a lot of people who expect about leagues now, menus for a start that it didn't have back in like 2018 or 2019. But if we get to do the Volamore expansion in future, then a league locked on Zeah will still be completely different from what player experienced last time. So we can take that, well, let's call it a twist, and still make it fresh. Um, and in the case of, say, Trailblazer, let's face it, you had to choose your starting zones and the areas you're going to unlock. Playing it again and getting to make different choices would bring variety in itself, let alone taking into account all the things added to the game since then.
Sure.
So I think we'll expect one day we'll get to see some of that fun again, along with hopefully new ideas.
I mean, there are so many like good, solid like league ideas. It's something that you guys could definitely pull from forever, and it's not like there's a lack of like player support for it. So I think it's amazing. Dead Man Apocalypse looks really cool. I read it the other day, or I don't know if it was yesterday when I saw the official post and stuff. But it's like when I saw the like, so I'm not a PvP guy. Eventually, I want to mess around a little bit with it. I used to do it back in the day, but this was like when Elf Mage was popular and guys like that. But I Kasoi I. But when I read that the waves of monsters and the other things involved, I was like, oh, that sounds super cool because it reminds me of, and I don't know how much you keep up with RS3, but like Shattered Worlds, it kind of reminded me of like monsters like appearing or kind of like that. Like I always thought that was a cool mini game, even though it kind of went off the map. But it's like that the idea of having like waves of monsters and maybe having to like band together even, like that's awesome.
Yeah, I think in the absence of a 1v1 tournament for I think good reasons, this will might be a lot more accessible to a lot more people. With the best will in the world, those tournaments never had more than what 1,000 people in,
Yep.
and a lot more people would play in the season than that. We'd like there to be something that they can all um, be challenged by,
Mm-hmm.
rather than playing the season to get to an entirely different gaming experience that, frankly, never worked very well anyway.
Yes. Well, and it seems like for a player like me who's not interested in PvP, I'm interested in Dead Man Apocalypse because I can go, okay, I have friends who do PvP. That's not going to be my function, but I want to come be a support guy, and help with resources, this and that, to help a
Mm,
player, achieve more. Like I wouldn't mind doing that and having a good time.
mhm.
And that's what I kind of thought was cool about it. And see, what was the last league? Trailblazer, or no?
Well, that's almost shattered
Shattered.
league.
Oh, that was dude. That was a ballpark success. That was so fun
Good.
too. I really enjoyed the different abilities you could unlock. I forget what we particularly called them, but it was like some of them were so fun. Like doing Vorkath with some of the unlocks were just insane. Um, what's your favorite type of music to listen to? Just to jump to something just completely different real quick. Like, do you have a type of music you listen to? You mentioned your musical background, and I did not know that, and that is awesome.
Mostly I go for classical or neoclassical type things. I'd say my ultimate favorite piece of music at the moment would be Schubert's String Quintet in C. It's kind of mind blowing and about an hour long, by the way, so not so good for clips. But I love that kind of thing. Although for background music, like if I'm getting on with some work, then I'd more likely to choose something more contemporary like Phillip Glass because he
Phillip
writes
Glass.
minimalist stuff. Just it works really well in the background, but occasionally there's something just beautiful slips through to you.
So no,
Um,
no Slayer, nothing like that.
I don't listen to a
I'm
lot of
just
more modern music.
I'm messing with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things too, like I play six instruments, and I used to be really heavy and stuff, and not like do anything but literally like I would be skilling while like learning songs on my other screen. So I actually
Oh.
learned playing guitar just from playing RuneScape, like trying to get my 99s. And it's one of those things that like over time. I kind of wanted to start learning like the actual RuneScape songs. So, I learned Harmony, Autumn Voyage, and a couple other ones, which aren't particularly like complicated tracks, but they're beautiful, simplistic, and above all, they like take you back. At least me,
Mm.
every time I hear them. Before the interview today, like, and again, I've tried not to fanboy and everything or be weird, but it's like this morning before the interview, like, I woke up and I was listening to the OSRS tracks, getting in the mood for everything, and I was just like, man, life is cool. And it took me back to those moments and made me think about progress, how lucky I am, how much of a blessing life can be. Um, so, what update are you probably most excited for this year to roll out?
I think it may have to be Desert Treasure too,
I'm so
because
excited.
Desert Treasure was a milestone quest at the time, and you know, I kept away from it when it came out because I didn't think my character
I'm
would be.
Zeroshin.
Uh
I'm
huh.
Zeroshin, so yes.
Respect. I just didn't think my character would be able to handle the bosses in it because they were, yeah, some of them like Camille were pretty tough for the time. But one day I thought,
Decius was the one that kicked my ass over and over. I could not beat him. I beat Camille easy. Salamanca Row. Like I even remember like what he says. Like I always loved him. But it was like, dude, Decius. I had to go get that pot of blood so many times.
yeah. In fact, when I was going to fight Desus, I saw somebody there trying it, and he died. I picked up his stuff and tried to PM him to give it back, but he had it on private. I never found him in Lumbridge, kept it. Um, Felt it was a jolly good day. Went off, killed Desus, didn't have too much trouble. I mean, might have been lucky on the RNG there. I don't know. Um, but I thought that was a pretty big milestone quest. It gave you the ancient magic, something that was so revolutionary at the time.
Even the
As
noise,
long as
even the
yeah,
noise of the ice barrage, like
yeah,
so nostalgic.
yeah, or spells that could heal you as you cast it. That's cool. I thought that was um well, the ultimate challenge of RuneScape for its time and for quite a while after. It was meant to be the hardest quest after Monkey Madness had been
Mm-hmm.
there. So I'm very excited to see that story continue and see what these bosses do with. I mean, if we see, say, Camille these days, we probably wouldn't think he's particularly remarkable as a fight
Right.
when, say, you might go and train on Basilisk Knights and deal with all their stuff. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how players get on with this new one and try and take that.
Could I ask? Are they existing bosses? Are they existing characters we know of? Or
Uh,
can I poke around a little bit? Of course, I don't mean to be intrusive.
well, I wouldn't get to reveal much, but no, there's some stuff there that is not like anything that.
Are they correlating with the Zeroshian elements? Are they coordinating with blood, ice, smoke, shadow?
There's some influence from that, but they're uh, pretty darn weird.
Okay.
Is probably the best I can describe them.
Yeah, we were chatting about Desert Treasure too. I'm so excited for that. That's one of those things that, man, Necromancy's coming up, but it's like I gotta play Desert Treasure 2 and all this other stuff. So I'm just letting you know, I'm gonna choose that over actively playing Necromancy.
Thank you. Um, Mod Ed and Mod Arcade and the guys and they've worked very hard on this one for quite a long time, and it's looking pretty special.
I would love to
I'm
talk to Mod Ed sometime because I tagged you in something. I'm very, like I was saying, I'm Zeroshin, and sorry I didn't mean to cut you off or anything. But I have a bad habit sometimes in discussions talking too much about lore, so I'm going to try to contain it to 30 or 45 seconds. Um, I'm so interested in Zaltok, and I always have been. Another thing is that, and again, I know that maybe the lore isn't connective. I'm not sure because also they can't confirm stuff on RS3. But long story short, I've always wondered if that was Zeros's father, based on like the influence in some of the Elder God quests, or of something of similar, and if he's like meant to be like the Antichrist of Zaltok, like the person who shepherds him in. And anyway, what I was getting at was some of the Zeah stuff I feel like would fit in perfectly, like the black crystals. There's the necromancers, the black stones. They're literally called the same thing. Another thing is Zarek. Even the name itself sounds similar to like a Zerosian or an Erebus type name. Is there any of that in relation in any of the new quests, or is there anything maybe you could comment on? Uh,
We have never established a connection between Zarek and the Zerosian story.
okay.
Zarek is very much treated so far as an antagonist in his own right on the other side of the world, partly so that we wouldn't trip over RS3's established law or find it restrictive. On the other hand, just because something has not been established wouldn't stop it potentially being established. After all, the gods fighting across Gilinor would have been such a big thing that uh, even on the land that only the pirates seem to be able to travel that far to, it would.
It would have
There's not a lot of
affected it.
sealing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just have bigger things on their plate at the moment,
Well,
and
well,
the
particularly too, it sticks out because like you know how there's I forget the name of it, but the demon that's involved at the bottom of the chasm of fire.
Yama, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So it's like in the Broken Home quest on RS3, there's a demon that's like pretending to be a ghost, and it's an abyssal demon, which is from Erebus, etc. So it's like, just saying, if you guys ever you want me to write a big crazy script for some lore to connect the two, you let me know. But now I love the way that you guys did Zeah. Like it was one of those things that I'm like, oh, there's a new continent. And I know some people like complain that it's so open, but then everybody complains on RS3 about things being too cramped. And I'm like, Zeah's one of the most beautiful, scenic, and enjoyable places.
it's got some beautiful stuff to it. I think um, it it struggled in its design because first somebody drew out a big map of this colossal area and didn't take into account that we'd only got about 4 or 5 months to put things in it.
Mm-hmm.
And to put something of any decent quality takes time. So, what the map shows there are 20 houses in this town. Inevitably, it means that one of them might be used for something functional. The others are probably going to have like one farmer who says "Uar" at you and not much else. And that's why a lot of them end up just being used as a random place that one of those groups of criminals occasionally meets in,
Mm-hmm.
just because we got the damn building and couldn't do anything else with it. And that's especially the case in Arceus at the moment. So I think there were mismatching expectations. Also, the best way in the world, the artists who start out working on Zeah, they were trying to create a new look to make this place distinct,
Mm-hmm.
rather than it being whole new land, looks just like the old land. Well, why we go over here then?
Sure.
So they designed new wall kits, different graphical styles, no Gurad shading, thicker walls,
Mm-hmm.
something that hadn't been seen on RuneScape
Well,
before.
different or architectural styles, just like humanity. I mean, you don't have the
Yeah,
same land in the UK as you have in the southern US.
yeah. And yeah, I go to Florida and I see, the houses there look,
Iguanas,
yeah, things look
lizards
so
everywhere.
different.
I
Yeah.
love lizards, so I love every time I see something like. Sorry, I just had to nerd out for a
Like,
second. Like I'm a reptile guy. I'm always in. I have a painting of
cool.
Zulra behind me. I know you can't see it on my camera, but I have a painting of Zulra on the wall. So it's like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
So you do.
yeah, he's back there roaring. I'll have to grab it and show it to you before I head. I even have a rune scimitar too, and some runes up there. Yeah, get
Oh,
down. I'll
brilliant.
I'll have like an MMA fighter guy over, and he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Bro, that's a nature rune, and that's a death rune, and a water rune." But so we were chatting about Desert Treasure 2, and again, anything if I'm prying too far, we're talking a little bit about the bosses, and me personally, I have everything done, ready to play. So, how long if you can say this, how long would you say the quest would be? Like 4 hours, 5 hours, please. Oh, I'm ready for a 4 hour quest.
I think it could be that long. There's some puzzles to deal with. Um, some based on things you've seen before, some challenges I haven't seen done before. I think there will be a bit of bashing your head against the wall until you get through with persistence for
Sure.
some of this. Um,
I
but
did
on the other
Mornings in
hand,
Part 2
yeah,
several times, so we're good.
yeah, yeah, I imagine. Wow, that's quite an undertaking. For what it's worth, we make a deliberate point of not encouraging speed runs of a completely new quest because we want players, even on the launch day, to try and experience it. And that's why we don't tend to celebrate the we don't go out of our way to pick up the first completion, um, because we don't want people racing.
Okay.
We know people are going to,
Yeah.
but we'd like them to also stop, read the dialogue, maybe read aloud the dialogue, maybe even they're streaming it. But when I'm playing a quest, I'm reading the voices aloud to myself, even if I'm
Yes.
not streaming. What my housemates used to think of that when I had housemates, I do not know. But it really got me in the mood and into the story, and that's the kind of thing we try to encourage. But also, I think people are going to take some time to just overcome the challenges here too.
And that's what's so awesome about our like different people's play styles. Like I'm not a person who's trying to get the quest done, in 90 minutes, a 4-hour quest in 90 minutes. Like when I did Wild, particularly just kind of jump back to that, 2008, 2009 era, I think. Wild Gothic Sleeps. That quest was so great, and I remember like I asked my mom because I think I was in 10th grade. I asked my mom not to bother me. I was like, I literally had did everything I could just to get 65 Herblore farming. I thought that was a crazy task back then. And I remember like just every single bit of that quest was like, I need to find more about Gothics. Oh, I'm learning about this. I'm learning about this. And then like when Lucian appeared, like that whole thing, I'm pretty sure I cried. Like I get really emotional. Like I don't care. I'm a 30-year-old man, and that when even now, like some of the cinematics I do for like my RS3 videos, I'll take the scene of Guthix. Like sorry for spoilers, but Guthix being killed by Sliske, and I even take that clip. And I'll do like little narrative where I'm like, Guthix told me, the end of one adventure is the beginning of another, and stuff like that. And like you were saying about cinematics, um, it, I think people rob themselves when they do spacebar.
Hmm.
And I know as a person who's very invested in the game, like I know you feel that way, but even then it's like from a paying customer perspective, it's like enjoy what you're doing, you know?
Well, ultimately, we don't want to tell the player, no, this is how you should have fun.
Sure, sure.
But something we touched on earlier is that in RuneScape, it's a big expanse. You can go do these things, you can go do those things. You set your own goals and walk your own path. And that even extends to how you play the game. Some people, if they're skilling and they're not doing the optimal rates, they feel like it's not the well, it's a bad day in the office. Um, whereas, we're also okay with people playing the game and that not being the main focus. If people want to play the game while, say, playing another RS3 character on another screen, we'd be cool with that. And hell, one
That's
day we'll
me.
probably
That's
have
me for
technology to.
sure.
Yeah, one day we'll probably have technology that you play the same character on RS3.
Yeah,
Lord knows it'd be popular enough. But the game is
I'm working on it.
there, and I think one of the things that's made old school RuneScape successful and RuneScape in general successful is that it is a huge world and it lets you go live in it. And therefore, we don't want to be too prescriptive about how you have fun or how you enjoy yourself, as long as you're not, dicking up somebody else trying to enjoy themselves.
Yes. Well, and I think that that's something that makes OSRS so special. Like the community in particular, like if you look at the really really successful content creators, like look at how different Oda Block and Jimmy are, or what's the name, Rendy and Oda Block, or Bodie, all these other people who are Mammal. They're all like real people, and that's really who they are, and that's why they're successful. Oda Block's the flamboyant. I've challenged him to a kickboxing fight a couple times for charity. but we'll see if he answers. What's up, Oda? All with love, of course. I like Oda Block, but it's one of those things like you have such a diverse like player group. It makes the content fun, and two, it's like you're taking the quote unquote people say it's simple to play OSRS, but you're taking the simple mechanics and then adding restrictions, just like Swampletics, that probably the most successful OSRS series of all time. He's like, hey, I'm gonna make this game that people want to think's easy hard, but it's like people actually play it know it's hard. So seeing like what people do with the content is insane. Or the prop hunt. I know that that's kind of a RuneLite feature, but that's so funny. Have you seen prop hunt?
I'm afraid not.
So what they do is they take it's Jimmy kind of made it popular, but a lot of them do it. They take a RuneLite client and it changes the player to a random like item, or like like a table or like a wall decoration or something like that, and they'll go hide around a city. And it's just funny because they might be like a zombie leg or like just this random quest like NPC or something like that. So it just makes it fun. But kind of about something I was gonna bring up was like with the OSRS, I forget the name of the quest, Tales of the North, when the Muspa got released. So
Ah,
so
yes.
I was like,
Secrets of the North.
yeah, Secrets of the North, sorry. Um, but it was like when I saw it was a Muspa, I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm sitting in my paranoid brain. I'm like, they're about to go down the Zeros path. Are they going to talk about his return or anything like that? Um, so I am so excited for Desert Treasure 2. I was going to ask, do you still play old school?
I'm afraid any time I've got for it these days is pretty heavily occupied, either working for it or discussing it with its players. I don't get to game much. Some Well, we have a very big team these days of staff who play it, love it, and these days I'm trying to just help them deliver what they want to deliver, um, with any additional influence I might get through moving out of development and into product management. So
All good kings were once adventurers, though, right? So I like what you're saying. You're trying to govern, and the adventure right now is on hold. Is that what I'm hearing?
well, way I see it, I've had the opportunity to deliver some cool content over the years. Sometimes content I wanted to, sometimes content that I didn't want to, but
Made it
that
happen.
other people thought was needed. But I'm just as happy to see cool content be delivered by people who aren't me,
Hmm.
as long as the players get it. And if I can smooth the way for good content to be delivered that way, then that's still delivering for the players, just in a different role. And somebody's got to be steering decisions. I almost never get my way on some stuff. I get my way on more things. The fact that Ed and Kieran and I could work together and try and recommend to the executive producer what content should be coming to the game over the next several years,
Hmm.
where the story arcs might be, where the making sure that different cohorts of players, PVMers, skillers, PvPers, etc., get their doses of content fairly regularly rather than being neglected for 3 years at a time, as sometimes happens. Trying to make sure the lore keeps progressing. That's the kind of thing that we're now trying to steer. Won't always go our way. Sometimes there'll be things that get in the way, like the game may have a sudden, really, really pressing need that means we have to, scramble the plan,
Yeah,
uh,
and maybe
deal
push
with what the
something
game
back
needs.
to take
Yeah,
care of something necessary.
yeah, or as often happens, a project will, run into delays because to make it just right to get what the players deserve from it, they're going to need an extra month. All right, that means that the next project would have 1 month less. Maybe we can't do that project in less time after all. Maybe we should, well, postpone something else to make space for it. Do it another time when there's more scope available for it. Um, or maybe we'll just get a survey that tells us something that we didn't expect. Like it used to be that rune crafting was the most hated skill in the game. And so
Used to. No, I'm just kidding.
well, we we ran we found from surveys, rune crafting, not a lot of love there. People do it because they need that level for a particular reason. They do not go further. They certainly aren't doing it for
1 to
fun.
44 is terrible on an Iron Man. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
My least
So
it is my least favorite, but it's like uh, it's got a
so
great
well,
upgrade.
quite. So where I'm going with this is that we'd be looking at evidence like that, what players are saying, sometimes anecdotally on social, sometimes in big quantitative lumps like a survey result, and choose. All right, we're going to send those devs to have a few months to do a rune crafting skilling update of some sort, and we give them that time. They make the good stuff happen. Suddenly, rune crafting is not at the bottom of the pile anymore. Agility, on the other hand, now that's another story. So that's the kind of influence that we'll be taking on board to steer what updates we'd like to see in the game over the coming years, taking into account, what players say to us, what players vote when you get 100,000 of them in a survey rather than the mere 1,000 or so we might see on social media.
You guys
Um,
hit it out of the park with that. I do have to say that was an excellent update. Um,
Modellena, Mod Husky, great work there.
yeah, how do you feel about forestry so far? Like, how's that going on your end? Like, how is reception been?
Um, Lots of appreciation for the fact that other people woodcutting near you is no longer a killer for your experience.
Mhm.
People, the fact that we got a massively MMO game that was best played away from people, it's not quite what anyone was aiming for. And
Sure.
yet it made sense because you want your optimal gains, therefore you want nobody else to be chopping trees with you. That's solitary. Maybe that's how things had always been for a long time, except fishing. But the ability to make it still feel like RuneScape woodcutting,
Mhm.
but make it all right to do together, that's a big deal. And I've seen a lot of people appreciating that. We've seen the recommended forestry worlds filling right up.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, it's not like they do anything special, those worlds. You can do it exactly the same on any world, but
So
it was
it makes me
people
wonder
wanted
though,
to do it together.
like company wide, like as you're mentioning, it being an MMO, you want people to play together, and then similarly on RS, not really, but kind of close. You've got the Woodcutters Grove for the Fort for 3 update. Like, do you? Because I was even going to ask about whether necromancy was ever on the table for old school too, but it's one of those things. Like, do you have like a consistent company wide expectation for like a skill, or is it still typically broken up by game? Like they just happen to be released around the same time.
So if we were when we were aware of the idea of necromancy, whenever we've talked about a new skill for old school, of course, reasons we never quite went there is that we've got a lot of players for whom it might feel like summoning was the more obvious way to go with all the baggage that entails,
Yeah.
and it never ended up being quite that popular. So we used necromancy in different lore. We wrote Arceus, we added thralls, and we've basically um, taken a cool theme
Hmm.
and done old school's version of it in
Yeah.
a way that doesn't really lend itself to there being a skill for it anymore. But that's all right because let's
Well, it's
face it,
been
there's
like
any
that for 20 years. We've dabbled in necromancy with certain NPCs, this and that, so it makes sense.
yeah. I remember back in 05, 06, when I was writing dialogue for Malignius Mortifer and all that lot, the mod mark was saying make sure the player doesn't think it's a teaser for necromancy because they're not going to get necromancy through this. So, okay, I shall make sure it doesn't look like a teaser. Not sure he was dealing with considerations I wasn't privy to, I'm sure. But at the time, it felt like we don't touch necromancy, don't go near it. I'm delighted to see that RS3's found a way that will work for them and is able to deliver it in the way it perhaps deserves, rather than it just being something we did to pay off a teaser years ago as an afterthought.
I have seen people who don't play at all, who have never played, who because I share stuff on like my personal social media and stuff too. People who don't play are like, that looks pretty cool. Hey, how do I get started on RuneScape? This and that. So, and I'm excited. I think that'll bring some interest back to RS3. But Desert Treasure 2, man, I'm probably most excited out of a single update in like for the entire company. That's probably my most favorite because like you were saying, Desert Treasure was one of those benchmark things where you went from being like a noob to like, all right, I'm hardened. I had to understand. I need super restores to kill Camille. I need to do this, that, and that was definitely a benchmark quest. Um, I was gonna ask you, what's your favorite color?
Dark green,
What is it?
dark green,
Arc?
dark
Dark.
green.
Oh, sorry, dark green. Okay. Um, and then do you have like, do you believe that aliens exist? Space aliens.
I believe in the possibility of life on other planets across all the exoplanets in all the distant galaxies that could be out there. I do not expect it to be within communication distance
Okay.
of, and the nature of that life could be as simple as, the some kind of, you know,
Bacteria.
like well, yeah, like the kind of life you get growing around a volcanic vent on the bottom of the ocean. I could totally imagine Europa having some of that,
Yeah.
even in our
Or
solar
Ganymede.
system.
Ganymede potentially.
Yeah, that
Even Venus had a sigma phosphorus, sigma 4, I think. Phosphorus reading where it's like apparently a pretty good sign that there's like some kind of biological activity going on.
awesome. Well, I think there's scope for that, although whether it would ever communicate with us in a way that we understand is not something I'm going to hold my breath for.
Sure.
But what the heck? I'd very happily go walk around, say, the Peak District, not to see the wildlife, but just to see the scenery. And um, it doesn't have to be talking back to me for me to enjoy it.
There's a lot of really interesting tales from the UK that I've been interested in, like the Rendlesham Forest incident. So I get way down the rabbit holes like my entire life. I've been into that kind of stuff. I got a couple questions from viewer Rui Lima. Is that all right? And then I can
Go for it. Go for it.
let you enjoy your day. Let's see. All right. What is your favorite random bit of trivia regarding some of the code for the game? So whatever
My
that
favourite,
entails.
there's an NPC called Ronton. Um, he lives in Draenor Sewer. And
Is that the vampire guy?
yeah, he's weird looking guy with his face covered. You talk
He's
to him in
got the
Desert
golden.
Treasure,
He's got the golden eyes, right?
pretty much, yeah.
Okay, scary.
And the unique code name for him is Malak. Malak is a vampire who lives somewhere else entirely, and they are not the same person. And there's a comment in the code there underneath the name Malak. Comment, actually not Malak. Name equals Ronton. What the hell did this? And why didn't they change it?
Yeah, it's got to stay there now. Like that's awesome though.
Yeah, and it's actually a bit of a faff to change because all the code references to Ronton would need updating, and the map square, and it's working. And it's actually amusing the staff rather than causing problems. So it'll probably stay.
That's interesting. No, I didn't even know like that was possible. That's crazy. Um, how do player moderators get picked? Is it a fully manual process? This individual's played for almost 20 years and he's always wondered.
The support team does it manually, and it is manual. And I believe it's not just. I mean, they'll identify accounts that have played a good while, got a good record of not being caught breaking rules, got a good record of not abusing the report button to mute all to try and get their opponents banned and things like that. And preferably not being found wandering around the game harassing people. They'll try and find examples of this. Also, check for account security, because if the player keeps losing access to their account, the last thing they want is for that account to be given mute powers, as you can imagine. It's like
The
handing a weapon to
hacker.
somebody who keeps, yeah, if somebody's going to keep losing their car keys every day, maybe don't give them a firearm to hold. Um, they clearly can't look after their stuff.
No, definitely.
And yeah, so the sport team does all that, and they do it manually, and then I think they actually try and Skype the person, not just out of the blue. They talk through the inbox,
Okay.
the on the RuneScape side. So that it's definitely from Jagex because only Jagex can talk through the inbox. But I believe the back and forth involves an actual interview at some point to try and. I mean, that's what I got from one of their managers. That's why he said it was taking so long to increase the number after we asked them to do so last year.
Okay.
Uh,
That's
but
I actually never knew it was that intensive of a process. I kind of just thought it was like a message, "Well, do you accept?" blah blah blah. I actually didn't know that.
when I got it, it was. I mean, I already worked for Jagex at the time, so they might have skipped a few things. But
Mhm.
they told me that they wanted to be able to interview these people just to make sure that they seemed serious and they were inclined to, try and use it to try and use their access to be good players and make the game better rather than just going out there to, lay the smack down on anyone who annoys them. Um, because let's face it, we do have younger players as well,
Oh
and
yeah.
some of them have been around for a while. Um, I get very little insight into the nitty gritty. Like sometimes players will tweet me and say, "Hey, how did this person get to be a player mod?" So, well, frankly, probably because the support team did not see the thing that you only took place yesterday that you've just got a clip of. Um, because they picked that person what a year ago. Maybe they just weren't aware of what you now know. Now,
Yeah.
maybe, of course, there'll be clips out there from a lot further back that it would be nice if they had been aware of. But I very much doubt they've got the scope to do a really intensive FBI level research trip into everyone's past.
Yeah, and I mean
Especially,
they could have got drunk and decided they didn't like you that day or anything. Like, yeah.
yeah,
But
well,
some people will
yeah,
never be pleased, you know.
of course. And heck, you need some tens of thousands of these people around the game. Somewhere along the line, you're going to get some iffy ones, or they might they might become iffy over several years of doing it. Um, or they might get hijacked, despite everyone's best efforts to make sure that only people who've got decent security ever do get picked. Um,
Yeah, I mean things happen. You go to the airport, you know, anything could.
yeah, and in the real world trading isn't just for items. People try and buy access to a PMod account, and if you can hijack one of those, um, you might be able to get money for it. So they are a target. It's one of those things that has to be contended with, unfortunately. And
For
it's one of the reasons. Oh, carry on.
Oh, I was just gonna say. Fortunately, I never had any like shady dealings. Like I never went. I've never bought gold, nothing like that. So it's very interesting that so many people are out there like the doing. It's just crazy to me. People buy accounts. Like I'm sitting there thinking, what kind of person is gonna go spend all kinds of money on this when they could just get it like the natural way? Just seems I don't know. It seems kind of artificial, you know. I mean, it is. It's like I don't know. I think you and I can understand like the deep respect for the game and how awesome it is. So I'm not into that kind of stuff. If you could have any role at Jagex, what role would you have and why? From Rui Lima.
I would not mind if I could ever ascend to product director. It's a role I hadn't seen until relatively recently because, frankly, we hadn't got one. But um, somebody, well, I've seen like four different people being product director for old school RuneScape since 2019. Mod Mike D, who actually appeared on live streams as in his role as product director, and talked about what what the team was doing kind of on an overarching level and why, and talked for the leadership of the game so that management wasn't just an absent, mysterious entity in the cloud, but was actually talking to players and reading the Twitch chat and uh, putting and engaging. I thought that was a really good thing,
Mm-hmm.
and if I ever could get into a role of that nature, I think that would be something I could try and do well similarly. Then I saw after he left, there was a couple of others who did it in very different ways. One, in fact, the team almost never encountered. he put together the annual survey for 2021, wrote he adapted the questions from RS3s, sent them to me, had to explain a few things like we can't ask players how much time they spend hanging out in the lobby because we haven't got a lobby.
Hmm.
And feedback he found really helpful before putting this survey out at the cost of some tens of thousands of bucks for the research agency. Um, and well, that's another way of going about it that I maybe would. I'm sure he had other skills, but he never was in a position to put them to play in the interests of making things better for players. And I'd like to be in a position where I could be getting to look at not just what's in the game, but what goes on around the game. Because you don't just experience the game, you experience customer service,
Hmm.
you experience the installation process, you experience the reporting problems when something goes wrong for you. I'd like to get to a place where I can try and look at more of that and maybe have some input into polishing up the rough bits because Lord knows there always are some.
Absolutely.
Um, I don't know if product director is the right place to do it from. Maybe it needs to be even further up the company where I'll probably never fit in. But I think product manager is hopefully a step in that sort of direction at least. Of course, we do still we're recruiting for another product manager
Hmm.
because Mod Markov, the executive producer, he's worked out that like if he's got me trying to look at what goes on in the game.
Shout out. He was really
um,
nice during my
yeah,
last fight and said some really encouraging
good,
things. So shout out to
cool,
him. Yeah, he's been very, very
awesome.
kind.
Yeah,
Um,
he is.
well,
Well, if he's got me focusing on stuff in the game, working with Ed and Kieran on plans for future roadmaps, and he needs another one who could maybe be assigned to look at some of the outside of game stuff that I mentioned, stuff that I would love us to be able to focus on better, but that maybe is lacking attention at times.
absolutely. So a friend, and I wasn't aware of this. My apologies. A friend said that you started a charity,
Oh, I never started a
or
charity. I
that
do
you
a
were
bit of work
involved.
on. Yeah, I'm the Citizen Advice Bureau is like 80 years old, and I'm just one of the trustees on the Cambridge branch of it. Um, they need, I mean, charities have boards of directors who are volunteers who um, oversee what the charity is doing, but don't get involved in the micromanagement of who's doing it and what the rotas are like. And I'm
What
their
was the
treasurer,
name? What
so
was the name one more time?
Cambridge and District Citizens Advice Bureau.
Okay. Well, because I wanted
Now,
to leave something in the description at least.
oh, cool. I will post in the Zoom chat
Okay, awesome.
our website. Okay,
Yeah,
that's in the Zoom chat there.
awesome. Thank you.
Probably come up on your screen as a little notification.
Oh, perfect.
And
That works out great.
yeah, and that's well, I'm just one of their board. My role is treasurer, so I oversee the um, the finances.
Hmm.
I don't, write checks or if anyone still writes checks these days, I don't know. But I'm responsible for ensuring that they've got decent financial processes, so that the CEO can't welch off with all the cash unexpectedly
Sure.
without the accountant having to countersign it, and making sure that they've got a suitable choice of auditor and that things are being delivered to the auditor in a timely
We were
fashion.
talking about me being busy, and wow, it sounds like you keep your hands full.
Well, I don't do a whole lot for anything that isn't, me. I mean, I work
Yeah.
obviously and do a lot for the game, but in a sense, that could just be me trying to earn a paycheck.
Hmm.
It could be. Obviously, I try to go a little further at times,
I am
but
very thankful for that. I really am. Like I hope you know that too. Like none of that is me being verbose or happy about having like a great interview today. It's like if I could talk to a single person, like again, I wanted to fanboy like toward the end of the interview versus the beginning. If I could fanboy over a person because again, RuneScape has saved my life on multiple occasions. It's always been there, in points in my life where I didn't have anything but a computer type deal. And it's one of those things like seeing the effort you put in. Like, I mean, we recognize that. I hope you know that. Coming from a player, content, even in passing, it's like one of those things that it's interesting to see though. Like even in your personal life, you're dedicated to the improvement of the people you care about, and that speaks volumes about a man, in my opinion. That's what made me even start fanboying for a second. Like that's awesome that you get involved with the charity like that. And treasurer, I feel like that's your perfect role too, because there's no bullshit happening.
Thanks. Well, they said that they needed somebody who'd be willing to spend some time coming to meetings, dealing with emails, reviewing a few documents, not too scared of spreadsheets. And I'm not scared of spreadsheets, so said sure, I'll give it a try. And that's been like 5 years now.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I'll be term limited there fairly soon because charity trustees ought to turn over occasionally rather than sticking around for a decade. And that was actually a slight challenge we had on that board, where half the board were 80 and or
Uh,
nearly 80, and they've been doing it for a very long time, but you don't always get new ideas at that point. Things just tick along, and I mean, to some extent, I've fallen into that trap.
mhm.
I There's a few things that I think now go a bit better that I've brought along, but there'll be somebody new, hopefully, coming in to replace me who'll say, "Yeah, that's all going well, but why don't you have a strategy for, um, putting out more social content?" I mean, for what it's worth, I actually said this at our last board meeting, so it's not a completely new idea to us. But I pointed out we put advice on our website for people who are worried about their debts piling up or who can't handle their utility bill because of the cost of living increases. And my thought was, why do we keep writing the answer on a web page? What if we made a TikTok video? Um, Made people absorb information through podcasts and videos a lot these days. Maybe.
Otherwise,
Um,
we wouldn't even, or I would love to still be chatting, but otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't have podcasts or do any of those things. So no, I completely agree. That's smart. I don't use TikTok very much, but it's like billions of people do. So it's like, yes, you're correct. It's like sometimes you fall into the trap of being like only this works, but it's like we live in a crazy day and age where, you know, people can become millionaires from their room. So it's like the proper communication strategy is so crucial.
yeah. And there's a lot of dodgy financial advice going around out there as well. So having some of the good stuff might be a way of fighting back a little.
We've all been scammed. So trust me, I know. I went my very first scam. I lost a full Rune Gothic set. Uh, yeah. I
I lost room plate legs, I think.
and then you
And this
learn
was
you
RS
never.
Classic. They were worth more.
Oh yeah, back then I remember somebody being like, "Yeah, it used to be 200K a piece," and I'm like, I started playing in 2005, and by the time I could afford Rune, it was like mid 2006. I think I paid 210K. But last question for you, and I really appreciate your time. And this is from your boy Dragon. Dragon's an awesome guy, and it's also a question that I would be interested in. I know we talked for a minute about the desired position. Is there any chance you'd ever work on RuneScape 3?
Wouldn't rule it out, but I'd have a hell of a lot of learning curve to go through because it's been 10 years since I focused on that game.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed a bit. Uh, I would be willing to go there, but I'd probably take a very long time to get up to speed on where it is, what it is, and what its community thinks.
Mm-hmm.
It took, I've had the opportunity to spend 10 years listening to the old school community. Can't always give them what they want in return, but at least they get to say it. And that's something I could not replicate very quickly on another product. So I'd go, but I don't think I'd be as useful.
Okay. No, I appreciate that candor with it. Um, Mod Ash, I want you to know how much this meant to me today. I want to thank you so much for your time, and I hope we stay friends for a long time. I hope that if there's ever anything that I can do for you, and then one day when I'm UFC champion of the world and I'm out in the UK, I'll have to. If you ever want to come out to one of the fights, I'll have to make that happen.
Well, thank you very much for your time also and for
Yeah.
your interest in doing this. It's been fun and hope your viewers enjoy it.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, we're
I,
not a huge channel or anything crazy, but it's like the people who know that this is happening, this means the world to them that we got to have this conversation today. And I hate to be selfish, it means the world to me.
well, thank you very much and you have a lovely day.
You too, my friend. Take it easy.